Namaskar and welcome to this session of the Vande Guru Paramparam series. In one of our previous sessions, we had a very interesting discussion on the teaching techniques for Sanskrit for the beginners and school students. Today we are taking it to the next step where we present to you a demonstration and a discussion around these teaching techniques. And this will be led by Ruchita Rane and Aditi Madhavan, who were our key speakers also during our last discussion. Ruchita Rane is an MA in Sanskrit with gold medal from University of Mumbai and an MPhil in Education and Postgraduate Diploma in Business Management. She has been teaching Sanskrit for the last 3 decades in different capacities, and she's currently pursuing her doctoral study on the topic, the attitude of teachers towards the gleanings from the Upanishads in the present day teaching learning process. So I welcome Ruchita ma'am to the panel. Aditi Madhavan is an MA and MPhil in Sanskrit. She has been teaching Sanskrit for the last 15 years in different capacities. She's presented various research papers and articles, including the methods of teaching Sanskrit in primary school at the National Sanskrit Conference. She's a member on the Board of Studies for the textbooks for classes 8 to 10, 11, and 12. Aditi ma'am, welcome to the panel. So in this session, I'll be moving off the screen and I'll give the space, I'll hand over the stage to both Ruchita ma'am and Aditi ma'am to have a conversation and about the different teaching techniques in Sanskrit. Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you, Subbu.
Dhanyavadaha. Namo Namah, Ruchita madam.
Namo Namah, Aditi. So let us begin. So Aditi, I think since we are looking at a process which is right from pre-primary to higher classes, we'll take it in that order. So since you have quite a bit of things to say in the pre-primary, you can start first.
Yes, I would like to start. I know you have equal experience in the same field, so don't say like that. Language learning, I think, starts with vocabulary building. So very first thing, whenever we start learning language, I think we have to introduce words. And introducing words, I think there are various methods to introduce the words. So we can actually show the things and introduce the words like kupi or say pustakam. So actually showing the things and introducing the words. The second thing we can say that all the things cannot be taken to the classroom, or everything cannot be shown and introduce the word. So the second thing we can use is pictures. So whatever is the study is done, according to that, the pictures should be for the age group of 3 to say 5 or 6. The pictures should be A4 size and covering that entire A4 size sheet. That big the picture should be, and showing that picture, we can introduce the words. We can actually teach any part of grammar through words like ekavachanam, bahuvachanam. I think for that we can see one clip of video where students are also reacting, and the teacher is showing a picture in ekavachanam and next bahuvachanam, but without uttering any term of grammar. So teacher is just showing first ekavachanam and then bahuvachanam. Gradually students are understanding. Once they know the words, once their vocabulary is built, afterwards they can understand that this is happening, this is the change for when I want to say for one thing and when I want to say for many things. So
Correct.
let us see one video where students are also there.
Yeah, that is nice, Aditi. This is a good method. I mean, yes, even I follow this. There is another thing that I would also like to add, which would be helpful, and that is, similar sounding words. For instance, if I have a word like, let us say, sugar. Okay, I have a word which ends in k. So I have sugar, bucker. Similar sounding words. Then I have words like taranam, maranam, karanam. So similar sounding and very, very quick, very small words. So it becomes, it's a phonetic, just like in English, we teach them cat, mat, bat. So like that, when you have these phonetically sounding, similar sounding words, I have seen that it helps build vocabulary. And because it's got a similar sound, like a rhyme, it also helps in teaching, the Varnamala later. Because like we said, neither do I begin with any grammar right away. So when you take it for smaller children, when you take it in this method, they automatically connect to words, and then it becomes easy to, draw the parallels that are there. Yeah. So this is one thing which is
Actually,
basically important, very important. That is to take in the vocabulary, enhance the vocabulary. Yeah. So you want
yeah,
to
that
take this
is
little
really nice.
ahead by taking the next thing in terms of words?
One is through actions, because only words, only nouns will not help us to make the sentence. So actions are also needed. So such actions we can introduce them through actually doing the actions, like
Correct.
khadati, pibati, likhati. Once they know action word as well as nouns, they can immediately frame some sentence that gives them real happiness, that they can at least frame one sentence.
Right.
And the last thing is a very favorite thing, that is singing songs and stories. They also help to build the vocabulary. So singing songs, like the stories are already known to them. So we can say Thirsty Crow story. So when they are singing the story, they come to know many new words. Now kakah, if they are knowing already, ekah asti kakah, trushitah. So all such words they come to know through the songs, and they remember these words afterwards. Whenever they want to say, they can immediately frame a sentence, aham trushitah.
अहं खादामि पिष्टकं पिष्टकम् अहं पिबामि दुग्धं दुग्धम् अहं धावामि शीघ्रं शीघ्रम् अहं पठामि पुस्तकं पुस्तकम् अहं गायामि मधुरं मधुरम्.
That is, what is your experience in this case?
Yes, it's the same. In fact, I use a lot of animated kind of movements and animated with words, actions, so that it becomes very easy. And this doesn't help just youngsters. It's my observation that when children, actually start, or people start learning even at a later stage, they connect better, because it's like I always say, learning for everybody at whatever age happens in different ways, which means it can be auditory, it can be visual, and there is auditory as well as visual. So people connect, even as, in fact, as people age. Like I have had a lot of experience with people learning beyond the age of 50, 60, and elders who want to learn. So they want to learn the literature as well as language. So in the language part, this is really useful, because they have this feeling that we cannot remember. So when you attach an action to it, when you make them do it, involve them, so they are also a part of it, and it becomes active learning. In fact, I am a very strong promoter of active learning more than passive learning. So get them involved in that kriya, in that action, and then it sinks in better, because since you've been a part of it, you automatically connect. And this happens when it is, even when you're getting them to say things orally, like even that is participation, that is active learning. Otherwise, what happens is, in passive, it's only Shravana Bhakti. So you don't connect. So activities that I design at different levels are to take and make them say as well. just as an example at a different level, let us say. So if we are taking examples like, you're comparing or teaching, you've taught them lat lakar, present tense, and then you want to do this in past tense now, right, in lakar. So then after having explained the concept, like you have gachati, agat, pathati, apathat. So then I normally divide the group into two, and then, random male, female, whichever way, different groups depending on the audience. And then one group says, let's say, for instance, we can do this. I'm going to say pathati. So obviously you will say
apathat.
I will say agacha, I will gachati, you will say
Once again, I didn't hear the word.
Gachati, pathati,
apathat,
likhati.
alikhat.
Correct. So when you do it in groups and then interchange it once again, so everybody gets a fair share. Like now I will say agachat, you will say
Gachati,
apathat,
pathati,
akhadat,
khadati,
abat.
pibati.
Correct. So this kind of thing, that is involving the audience directly, and even if it doesn't have to be the entire span, but that little piece. So it helps to drill. So I have seen that this kind of activities, like of different concepts. So now this is not restricted only to lat lakar, lang lakar, but I can use this concept when I'm talking about, or use this activity when we are doing tavatu. We do the tavan and tavati, patitavan, patitavati, likhitavan, likhitavati. So these kind of things where you want to get different forms from them, but at the same time they should retain it. So then I try to do all these activities which will involve. But yes, this works right from, and this is a uniform thing. The beauty of this technique is it works right from the pre-primary to whichever level. Everybody can connect to this kind of a technique. However, for different things. So there was another thing that I wanted to ask you is, or maybe if you have been following anything for mathematics, do you teach mathematics apart from the Gita that we have, Ekam Dve, Vadanti Sarve, and that kind of thing? Do we use anything, or what are your experience with numbers or mathematics in that case?
No, I have only taught numbers. How do we do it?
It's fun to teach them Gunana Koshtakam, like tables. Na? We learn this 2 1s are 2, 2 2s are 4, 2 3s are. We say these pade in Marathi as well. So in Sanskrit also you can do the same thing. So I'll just do a small thing. I'll just put up the numbers so it becomes easy to have it in front. The table remains the same like in Sanskrit. So you have this as Dvayoho Gunana Koshtakam. Okay. So this is, I'm just writing it. So how it will go will be, you put it up for 2 groups. If it's a small group, a small age group, you don't put up anything. You just say it. So it will be like this. For instance, Athatvayoho Gunana Koshtakam Dve Sakrut Dve Dve Dvi Chatvari Dve Tri Shat Dve Chatu Ashta Dve Pancha Krutvo Dasha Dve Shat Krutvo Dvadasha Dve Sapta Krutvash Chaturdasha Dve Ashta Krutva Shodasha Dve Nava Krutvo Ashtadasha Dve Dasha Krutva Vimshatihi. So this way you can teach them tables in at a younger age, and they begin to think of these numbers and others in Sanskrit itself. So you can teach all kinds of tables using this format. So Dve Sakrut, Dve Dvish, Dve Trip, Dve Chatush, Dve Pancha Krutva, which we know the format, like 5 times. The logic is 2, 1 time is 2, 2 times is 4. So Dve, Dvi is 2 times, Dvivaram, Dvi, and Chatvari, that kind of thing. So it's easy, and the children like to listen to it. It makes them think of words, and this is another thing. Always ek ke saath free offer. In most things you get this, you get them to learn the sandhi. Because when you say this, how do you say? You say Dve Dvish Chatvari. Dve Dvish Chatvari. or you say dve chatu ashta. So dve chaturashta, dve panchakruto dasha. So slowly, they listen to the sound of joint words, which comes later, because normally when you teach them, you say balakah lekhanim sthapayati, balakah patham pathati, individual words. But slowly they get to listen to the joint words. So this automatically helps them understand later the concept of bringing words together as sandhi or otherwise. So this is an additional thing. But while we are talking of sandhi, I think you have quite a bit of your activities that you do with the older class. So would you want to say something of teaching higher grammatical concepts in this?
Yes, I like your this idea. Really nice that unknowingly they will learn these sandhis, which they are not at all learning anywhere else, except say subhashitas, shlokas. But there also they don't know exactly this is happening. The sound is changing in that way. So this is really nice. I liked it very much. With older class, as you said, activity is helping everywhere. Say I have done teachers training also, so there are teachers who are always waiting to do something, to actually play, actually get up from their place instead of just listening to the lectures. So everywhere actual playing the game or actual physical activity helps a lot. And as you say, with older class also, where we have a Visheshan Vishesha, which is quite difficult for them to find out in the sentence, or making a question. So where to use kasya, where to use kasyaha, how to frame the question, whether it should be kidrusha or katham. So some areas are confusing like this. So in that way, as you said, making two groups, we actually recite the table, which helps them to memorize the different forms of kim. Like if one row or one group is saying the forms of balakah, the other row says the forms of kim along with that. So it becomes like, if I am saying balakah, you will say the form of kim. Balakah.
Kaha.
So
Kaha.
kaha balakah. They are getting the question, who is this boy?
Correct.
Balakam. Balakam avayasi. Which boy you are actually calling? So in this way, they get practice of making the forms to frame the questions, and they actually like this activity very much, even in 8th 9th class or 11th 12th class.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a very nice way of doing it. Since you mentioned tables, I also wanted to say we have this traditional way of reciting the tables, but youngsters kind of connect to a lot of tunes and melody of what is there around them. So while they like Devaha, Devau, Devaha, Devam, Devau, Devan, and all that, yet sometimes, I mean, as an experiment, we tried this and it really works. It helps connect students. Like you have an Aarti tune, and then you put the table in that kind of a tune. So putting things to different tunes, like you have a lot of tunes, you can put this for Garba, you can put it through any tune and it just fits in. So I mean, you can try doing that as well. Since you are a singer, it's easy for you. But something like Deva Devo Devaha Prathama, Devam Devau Devan Dvitiya, Devena Devabhyam Devaihi Tritiya, Devaya Devabhyam Devebhya Chaturthi, Deva Devabhyam Devebhya Panchami, Devasya Devayo Devanam Shashti, and so on and so forth. So there's kind of a like it could be any tune that they connect to. But Aarti is something which brings them. Not many children learn Aarti these days. Ganpati Aarti and all. They are a little away from it. So this helps them, and they feel, oh, we've listened to this somewhere, we've heard it somewhere. then there's a connect. So like I always try to see if you can get an added benefit in something, like a value add. So here you learn a table and at the same time you connect to some tradition of ours like Aarti or something like that. So then that helps. I mean, it's just like an added thing. And also these days they teach a lot of, they do this in mathematics as well, formula and physics theory, like, your Newton's first law and other things. You sing it according to some song. I guess you too have done something like this of setting certain rules or certain things to songs. So, or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what, but would you like to share that? I think you're a pro at doing these kind of things.
Yes, actually, putting anything in any rhythm or any music, it helps them to memorize it. So,
Correct.
let the student enter in 11th standard. Still, there some basics are not very much clear. So, I always start from alphabets, that is Varnamala.
Correct.
So, and their Uchcharana Sthana. When it is not clear in their mind, we have to start from pronunciation. So I
Correct.
always start my very first class, let it be 11th standard, with Varnamala. And this kind of song helps me always, like a, a, I, u, r, e, I, o, au, anuswar, visarga, k, kh, g, gh, ng, ch, ch, j, jh, ñ, t, ठ, d, ढ, ण, त, थ, द, ध, न, प, फ, ब, भ, म, यरलव, श, ष, सह. So your actions are also going, music
Correct.
is there, rhythm is there. They start banging the bench and they enjoy the song, and the pronunciations are clear in their mind.
Very nice. That's true. Very, very
Yes.
nice. Very nice. Yes. So
What about,
basically this, yeah. Yeah, you wanted to say something.
yes, because you deal with various types of group who are interested in Ayurveda or various areas, and you always try to connect uh, Sanskrit through these areas. So how do you do that? I am actually interested in knowing this.
So what we do is you take a shloka or whatever, whichever that field is in. Like for instance, I will do one with the thing that I do like for dance, because I teach a group of people Sanskrit through, as in they are dancers. So they want to learn Sanskrit for understanding their text, dance text or music text. So then we begin with something like, if you have a shloka like Angikam Bhuvanam Yasya Vachikam Sarva Vangmayam Aharyan Chandra Taradi Tannamash Satvikam Shivam. So this is a shloka. So in this case, what I would do is for any shloka that is there pertaining to that text. So here Angikam, we automatically know that you are talking of the body. So it is Angika. So I show the movement that is there because they are dancers. So they connect to it. Now Angikam Bhuvanam Yasya Vachikam Sarva Vangmayam Aharyam Chandra Taradi Tam Numa Satvikam Shivam. So this is a straight shlok which has got no sandhis in particular. So I go by word meaning, right over there, whichever that is, Angikam, Bhuvanam, Yasya. At the same time, there I start introducing from the shlok is familiar to them. See, when you begin with a familiar ground, it becomes easier to connect to a new thing. Like we say, you have to have your Purva Jnana. So on the ground of Purva Jnana, you build the next Jnana. So that is the standard. It's a maxim of teaching, that you go from known to unknown, then from simple to complex, from concrete to abstract. This is standard in every teaching format. So I only use these maxims, but I put them in that place and put it there. So what is their Purva Jnana? They know Angikam Bhuvanam Yasya, they know the shlok by heart because they have done it many times. Most of the dancers have done it many times. So now I teach that verse, that shloka. So Angikam, I explain the meaning. I ask them what they do to it. So it is, they'll say, we pray to so and so. So I tell them, okay, you pray to, which means you have a preposition there to. So for them to understand the sense of that word. Bhuvanam Yasya. So now Bhuvanam Yasya, they know the word meaning. So now I introduce these words as whatever, Shashti or whatever there is. Then I use endings for them, for it to drill. So when you have a shlok where you have am there, so I always say this am, nam, sham, sam, something like that. Or if you have smin, put it in the saptami, ekvachan, bin. So I just try to use these, endings which are common. So they learn one, they learn many. So now when these people are learning a word like, let us say, tasmin. So I will say tasmin, yasmin, kasmin, etasmin, anyasmin, sarvasmin. So I always give them this 1K, 8 free offer. Nobody gives you such a great offer. Like you get an offer 1 per 2 free, 3 free. Nobody will give you 1 per 7 free, 100 free. So when I do a sarvanam for them, I do it like this. Yasya, kasya, tasya, etasya, anyasya, sarvasya. So they know the sound of the word and they connect it. So here I use the dance verse for them because it's the text. I have used the grammar. I have deduced the grammar for them, each step by step, so that they understand what it means now. And it's not just one, like we say, just one wrapped up meaning. They know the individual word meanings. So that is how I take the text, whatever text they are learning. So I use their background and connect it to it. That is how I handle this. Likewise for Ayurveda also. So for Ayurveda, if you have any text like Ashtanga Hridayam is there, then you take a shlok out of that and then explain the concept, whatever concept they know in terms of Ayurveda, and then connect all the grammatical end to it. So for them, it becomes learning with a purpose, because they don't want to learn Sanskrit for Sanskrit. They want to learn Sanskrit for Ayurveda. So then in that case, take the shloka and explain it from that angle, but deliver Sanskrit, because at the end of it, they have to know Sanskrit. So they can read their other texts. So that's the method that I follow. Word by word, go word by word and explain it grammatically to them. And then the concepts also come through that itself slowly. So in the initial few shlokas, I will never mention grammar per se. I will tell them word meanings. I will tell them listen to what preposition is used, or in whichever language. If it is Marathi, I will say use pratyay, listen to the pratyay, yatsa, jatsa. So like that, I stress on those words. I always stress on the end of the pratyay, because now sound makes a big difference. I firmly believe that sound, the way you stress the sound. Aditi kadi yetes, Aditi kadi yetes, Aditi kadi yenar yetes. If I stress on each word, I get a different impact, right? So like that, I use this in grammar. I stress on the ends. So yasya. So every time they hear me say tasya, kasya, etasya. So what is common to them? Sya. So what does sya mean to you? It means of, kimva cha. What does that mean? Shashti ekvachan. So initially it takes a little while, because it's a new technique for them. But once they get used to you saying that, the later ones, you don't have to spend so much time. So for me, it's that initial investment of time which makes a big difference. It takes time there, but later on it becomes easy. So this is my experience with this. Aditi, I see that in the new, like every time the syllabus changes, there is something new from the traditional text which is brought into the syllabus. There are some aspects that are there. But like there is the cooking, the different kinds of the soupers and the different typical, preparations from our original texts which are into the syllabus now. So how do you use the traditional, whatever is taken and convert it to its usable form here, so that, the students connect to it? Because I think this is generally, I know that it is generally with the higher classes, 11, 12, where they are not in any mode as such to take in too much of information. They like a lot of activity. So I hear that you have put in even, you've brought your kitchen into the classroom. So that's a very beautiful technique of getting that experimental lab into the classroom. So I think you should share that with our audience.
Actually, yes. The last textbook of 12th standard had a lesson from Dashakumara Charitam, where a girl cooks in very limited sources, and she cooks the entire meal for the guest. And it was always like students were not able to believe how come this is possible, because this age they should be convinced, otherwise they will not be interested in learning that particular subject. So every time I was thinking how to convince them that it is possible to cook in minimum resources. Then I got the idea that whatever is mentioned in the lesson, let us do it actually in the class. And we actually brought a handful of rice grains with husk, and we did whatever she did, the girl did in the lesson. And when they experience that, oh, it is actually possible. Actually, it is possible to make a full meal in that with the help of that handful of grains. Then they actually enjoyed it. Even I was happy, and at the end, whatever was ready, we all enjoyed the food also.
Wow, that is great.
The same thing
So as
with the new textbook of 11th standard, where we have various recipes from Manas Ullasa. We have lassi, idli, various types of soups. So everything we did in the class, and the end product, whatever is there, we enjoyed that food also. So it helps a lot in classroom. Yes, a teacher has to prepare a lot before actually conducting that in the classroom. But when we are including students in actions, they always used. They are bringing some ingredients, so they are going to remember it lifetime. Whatever actions they are performing, those also they will always remember. So that becomes memorable lecture for them.
correct.
Have you tried anything like this?
What I did is with things more than not recipes really, not with recipes, but I do these the recipe things when I do the training for. I do these topics of nutrition for the body, mind, and soul. So then I take traditional recipe from a Sanskrit text, and of course there it is not imparting the knowledge of Sanskrit, but I connect it to Sanskrit. Though I am delivering knowledge on nutrition, what I do is I connect it to Sanskrit because the recipe is from the text. So like some preparations which are given in Ayurvedic text, I would take that example, and I would tell them the nutrition point of it from the point of view of this, and then people will actually try those recipes at home, and then they will communicate it. So I have not directly done this in the classroom per se, but a different approach. That is, I try to get the people who are the science oriented people into Sanskrit like this. They should feel something for Sanskrit and their traditional. They've heard about it. They know that our sciences talk so much. Then where is the real thing? So the real thing is getting them to know from the biochemistry or from the science, but bring it to Sanskrit and then learn from Sanskrit and understand how their science is very meaningful. So it's not a direct technique. It's an absolutely indirect method, but it helps them connect to Sanskrit. And for me, the end point is that if they can connect to the original, to the Sanskrit part, then that is like, okay, you have won whatever you wanted to, your whatever your intent is, it's taken care of. So that's how I do it. It's a roundabout method. But taking things to classroom, yes, this is one thing which I have done with all kinds of age groups. Bring this, bring that, and put it together. Like put it together in the form of a story. Create a story out of it. Like you bring material, I tell them to get things, and then after having brought the things, now let's create a story out of it. So use the objects that you have brought and make one common story. So this is something that I do. So there is active participation because my object has to come. That's the student's thinking. And then the student gets connected to it because the student becomes a part of that story per se. So that's the way it works for the student. So in that way, yes, I have used getting things into the classroom and working on it. So taking this point a little further about different teaching techniques and how methodologies. So methodologies may be common to all kinds of subjects. This is one thing. Like you can have a story method for students in any class, in any subject. It could be any subject for that matter. But how you deliver that. So it becomes a technique which is all encompassing. So Aditi, while you kind of switched off for a moment, I just said that whatever technique we use at the end of it, what we see is that you can use a particular technique for any subject. Like since I mentioned the last technique that I use the nutrition part to get them connected to Sanskrit, but actually they are learning some nutrition or something like that. So what I was trying to say is we use any technique in any kind of a thing. subject, you should be able to tweak that technique to your subject. And that is the skill. Like you said, it's the teacher's thing which comes in. But the teacher has to focus on very important point is that make sure the teaching learning process is an active process for the student, rather than, once the student is involved in it, like you did through some of your all the techniques that you said, or maybe as we mentioned it in our discussion overall, that once the participant or the learner is involved actively, then that learning is not only, what I would say is not just good learning, it is permanent learning, a learning that will remain for a life. You think about this?
Yes, definitely. Because Dhruva Sanskrit Mahotsav is my great experience, whatever you are saying, because students are really independent and they don't wait for the leader. That is just the only teacher in the college, but the entire crew is preparing all the events on their own. And this year, I'm really happy to mention it here that this year we have the theme Rama Panchayatanam, that is Ram along with 5 characters, main characters of Ramayana. And I'm really glad to mention it that nearly 6, 7 students of mine have actually read Valmiki Ramayana at this age.
Nice.
Just to prepare various events of Dhruva Sanskrit Mahotsav. And the events are like treasure hunt, quiz. Quiz needs a lot of knowledge regarding that particular theme. So whatever the theme is, last year we had sports, before that food, whatever the theme is, that theme related texts, at least those students who are interested in reading, studying, they go to texts, and other students who are good in technology, uh, applying that content in various events. So all these students coming together, they use their various skills, and uh, that is the success of Dhruva Sanskrit Mahotsav. So actually, they are being independent.
Yeah, that's true. It's really a great event. I've been, though I'm not directly participating in it each time, but yes, I really appreciate that effort, not just from your end, but the involvement of students and the memories they carry with it. This is exactly what I'm saying, is that they carry the memory and the learning forever. So it's not just restricted to that time, but it's a permanent kind of a thing. So yes. And also with regards to technique, when we say, most of the time people say that you're using a particular method, you're using a story method, you're using a particular XYZ method, a question method, whatever. But I think it's interlinking or using each one depending on the topic. That is the skill, the ability to choose a technique, to use a technique so that, the learner gets connected. I would like to share this little experience. I was dealing with a few kids with just, let's say, the age from 4 to, it was again varied, 4 to 12. So you have that challenge of taking care of 4-year-old and a 10, 12-year-old, and they were learning. And the 4-year couldn't write, but the 5, 6-year-old children were writing. So I did a dictation for them. And in this dictation, it was basically they had to just listen to the sound of it and then try and reproduce the sound. They had just started learning aksharas, our Devanagari letters. So they would listen to the word and they would try to write it. So like I mentioned earlier, I used similar sounding words. So similar sounding words. And then they, after writing the dictation, we had a large number of words, like, 30 words or so. So we said, okay, let's now take this and make a story. So the students themselves, even as much as a 5-year-old could take a word from that and make add something to it to make a story. At the end of it, they had one big story, like a couple of, there were about 10 kids. So they had a story of about 10 sentences and using every single word. And I had put random because I had not given them the intention of a story, but they came up with all kinds of things, maybe broken here and there sentences, not being able to write the exact Kriya Pad in the fine order, but they could use words to create a story of their own. And they felt like, okay, now here on, we will make our own story. Imagine like a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old child wanting to, feeling good about wanting to make his own story. And then at the end of our program, we actually got them to read their stories and they came up with all kinds of ideas, like, ideas are innumerous, but they've used the right words. They've used as much as children. There was one girl who used like a rabbit. Rabbit is quick and timid, and her rabbit in the character is, rabbits are very sweet to look at. She named the rabbit also like that, who was Sumukhi. Then she named the person, the tiger, who was very strong, as intelligent or whatever. So the characters, like we have in Panchatantra, the characters having the names. So the children, they came up with their own names for the characters, which were very apt, So that kind of thing you can build up when you just leave it to them to, grow with their story. Like you prepare the story. So give them just that impetus and tell them to weave it around. They use vocabulary. They want to learn more. So this is a technique that works really well with, the smaller kids of improving vocabulary. And I'm going back to it because that circle gets completed there. Like, you begin with the little ones, you move through all the techniques, you handle all those, and then you have to come back to this because there has to be a closing point. So the closing point is the beginning point for the new cycle, because new learning begins at that age,
I would just like to add games for 1 or 2 minutes, say, because games are always helping to revise the things. In this four corners, this game is really helpful when vocabulary should be revised in various ways. That can be done in classroom as well as if you are teaching your own child at your home. So you can conduct the games in with the larger group or with just one child. Similarly, so this is one game which I am showing the video, which is four corners. We can conduct the game of four corners in the classroom, considering four corners of the classroom when we have different four categories of vocabulary. If this is the classroom, I have given the name of four corners: Vastrani, Patrani, Vadyani, Khadyam. Teacher will announce one word and students will catch that particular corner. Chakalehah, Mathani, Venuhu, Karavastram, Aham khagah prani phalam va pushpam vadami tasmin bhage utpataniyam. Shukah, Shunakah, Japakusumam, Suryakantihi, Amram, Bidali, Kadali Phalam. Bahu samyak. Now the second game is Damsharas, which is very much famous and liked by everyone. So that helps me in college also, where if I show some action and you have to frame the sentence. So what will this be, the sentence?
Gajah Kadali Phalam Khadati.
Very nice. Uttamam. So only here we will just see whether they are using the proper vibhakti. So this is for revision and actually sentence framing. So these games bring fun in classroom as well as at home.
Correct. Very true.
I think, ma'am, it's been an amazing demonstration, I must say, and a wonderful discussion between both of you, because both of you speak from so much of experience of having dealt with different kinds of students. So I think it shows very clearly that what works, what doesn't work, which is the most apt technique. I think it's very clear in the conversation itself, and I'm sure all the people who are listening to this, especially the teachers who are listening to this, would have a lot to take from this and also apply in their own classes. as they go back, and I'm sure it's going to be very useful to them. We'll plan to have many more such sessions, ma'am, in the future, because I think this is really useful. It's putting whatever we spoke in the last session about techniques, it's putting it to practice, actually seeing how things work. So I must thank both of you for being on this panel and having this wonderful discussion and demonstration for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thanks. So, as you saw, it's one of the practical ways of whatever we spoke about in terms of teaching techniques. And we did speak about the theory aspect of it and what are the social aspects of things. But what is more important is how do you make it into practice? And that practice can only be told by practitioners and teachers. And that's why we had this session, a bit of a different session, again, an experimentation that we are trying, where we try to bring in some demonstrative techniques also to all of you, so that those of you who are practitioners, who are teachers, could take some benefit out of all this. We'll plan to have many more such sessions in the future, which don't just focus on the theoretical aspects, but also bring in a bit of practicality into these sessions. So please keep watching Subbu's Corner, both on the FB page and the YouTube channel. We shall come up with many more sessions in the future. So till then, namaskaram.